Good morning, sports bettors. How we doing? Matt Modi here with OddsJam. Now that the stage is set and all four games have been decided, I'm just going to be giving you a betting preview of the NFL Divisional Round. Obviously, 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday, giving you a betting preview for every single game using the OddsJam screen, using the OddsJam line shopping tool to identify early value across the sportsbooks. And the kind of examples that I'm looking for in terms of finding value. Take, for example, this 49ers game. Most sportsbooks have this spread between 4 and 3.5. So depending on who you wanted to back here, you could get a pretty good price on the 49ers minus 3.5. It looks to be at -4 on the majority of sportsbooks, including the OddsJam line, which prices this at -4. This is pulled from Pinnacle Sportsbook, the sharpest sportsbook in the world. It's kind of similar logic here with the Jags at +9. Pinnacle has it at -8. Most books have it at 8.5. Right off the bat, we see that we can get +9 on WinBet and PointsBet. So using the screen is a pretty easy way to immediately identify outliers across all of the sports books. But to get into the weeds here, I'm going to use the line shopping tool. First game on the docket, we have Chiefs Jaguars, 4:30 Eastern on Saturday. Should be a good game. Now, obviously, the Chiefs are pretty heavy favorites here, between 8 and 9 points, depending on where you look. Now, whenever I am going into betting on a play, there are 3 main sports books that you want to look for to kind of set the line. Pinnacle, Bookmaker, and BetOnline. Those are the 3 of the sharpest sports books in the world. So BetOnline prices this at Chiefs -8, juices it towards the Chiefs. Bookmaker prices it at Chiefs 8.5, even money each way. Pinnacle also has it at Chiefs -8, juicing it towards the Chiefs at that number as well, but pricing it at Chiefs -8. But look at 2 sportsbooks have it Jags +9. Now, this is a rematch of a game played earlier in the year. Chiefs won by 10, but that was before the Jaguars went on their run. Now, I am obviously extremely worried about the Jags defense. Even in a weird game against the Chargers last week, the Chargers never really threatened the Jags downfield, and their secondary is the biggest weakness for the Jaguars. I mean, previous weeks, the Jags went up against Josh Dobbs. They went up against Chris Streveler. They went up against the two-headed monster, whatever Texans were doing. So they hadn't really been tested through the air, and I thought that would have been the case against the Chargers, but the Chargers coaching staff, I don't know what they were doing. You never really know what the Chargers are doing. So you understand why the Chiefs are such heavy favorites. Obviously, the markets are taking all of that into account, but the fact that the sharp books have it at Chiefs -8 or -8.5 show you that you can get a pretty good price on the Jags +9 at -110 odds at PointsBet. So I do think that this game is going to be closer than people think. You know, whatever happened in the first half of the Chargers game, I think the Jags kind of not necessarily got it out of their system, because it's not like, okay, once you throw 4 interceptions, then the game can really start. But the playoff atmosphere, just kind of getting acclimated to the playoffs, they kind of got themselves settled. Trevor Lawrence settled down a little bit. And I trust Doug Peterson and the Jags to have a pretty good game plan to attack the Chiefs defense. So I don't really think the Jags have a chance to upset the Chiefs, but I do think that it'll be a closer game, and the +9 is a pretty good value. So I do like the Jags +9. In terms of the total, nothing really no real value here on the total. It's obviously a really high number at 51.5 or 52. Now, again, you want to look at the sharp books. Pinnacle and BetOnline have this at 51.5, juicing it towards the over. Now, there's no value here if you remove the VIG from these sports books. Bookmaker has it at 52, also juicing it towards the over, but again, no value here on the total. So in terms of plays, I do like the Jags +9, and I'm going to sit out any play on the total. So the next game we have, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, we have the Eagles versus Giants. Now, as an Eagles fan, I will try to be as unbiased as possible. The Eagles are obviously heavy favorites here. Moneyline giving them like best odds at -330 on the Giants side at +299. Now, if you want to look at the sharp books, Bookmakers has the heaviest side on the Eagles, has them as the biggest favorite with bet at 375, -375, with BetOnline in Pinnacle at -348. In terms of the spread, now it opened up at 8.5. got bet down to 7.5. At one point, it was at 7. You could get it at 7. Now it's kind of been settling at 7.5. And the Giants are slightly favored at that 7.5 number. So if it were -7, I could see leaning towards the Eagles. At 7.5, I think the Giants are a really, really good play here. Now, if you remove the VIG, which is the juice that sportsbooks price odds, there's not going to be any value here on the Giants plus 7.5, right at -108 at WinBet. If you just click this button, remove the VIG. Pinnacle has a true line at -103, Bookmaker at +100 at even money, and BetOnline at -104. So even the WinBet odds at -108 aren't plus EV, but I do really like the Giants at this number. The Eagles side, it all comes down to health. You know, these two teams played earlier in December, and the Eagles smashed them, scored 48 points, ran for over 250 yards. But missing in that game was Giants defensive tackle Leonard Williams, Giants best cornerback Adoree Jackson, Giants best safety Xavier McKinney. So those are three hugely important pieces for the Giants, who are finally healthy. On the Eagles side, Lane Johnson is going to be banged up playing with a torn core muscle, which sounds incredibly painful. And obviously the biggest news here is Jalen Hurts. He missed 2 weeks with the shoulder injury. He played in week 18. Clearly didn't look himself. Also, clearly the Eagles were incredibly, incredibly careful with their game plan. Now, I'll talk out of Philadelphia is about how much pain Jalen's in, about how much of a warrior he is, about how much pain he's going to have to gut through to get through these playoffs. So there are huge concerns on the Eagles side regarding health, where the Giants are just now getting healthy at the right time. So 7.5 points, I think, is too much for a divisional matchup, and this game will probably be close. The Eagles should win. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost, depending on the health of Hurts, but I will gladly take the 7.5 points for the Giants at -108 odds at WinBet. I think that's a really good price. In terms of the total, same thing here, no value really on the total. Bookmaker has it at 48, BetOnline, Pinnacle have it at 48.5. When the three sportsbooks aren't aligned, there's no outlier to the three. I kind of want to sit out of a play there. So just looking at the Giants plus 7.5, loving the underdogs on Saturday. For Sunday's games, first up, we got Bills versus Bengals, rematch of obviously that fateful Monday night game. Bills pretty heavy favorites here, which I found interesting. Now I understand why, which I'll get into in a little bit. -218, the best odds you can get on them at Circa Sportsbook. If you want to back the Bengals, you can get them at +200. In terms of the spread, odds range from Bills -4.5 all the way up to -5.5, depending on where you look. Now, BetOnline, Bookmaker, and Pinnacle all have this at 5. So it's kind of like you can middle it, take Bills -4.5, take Bengals +5.5, and hope that the Bills win by exactly 5. In terms of value, the Pinnacle is favoring the Bills at -5. So the better value here is Bills -4.5 at -108 odds versus Bengals +5.5, if that makes sense. Like Pinnacle is favoring the Bills at -5, so getting them at 4.5 is a pretty good price. And I actually do like the Bills -4.5. I think, it's almost like people are giving more weight to the Bills struggling than the Bengals struggling. And yes, the Bills looked, against a third string quarterback, they looked bad. But the Bengals had a huge break to take the lead in that game at the end of the game. Obviously, the fumble returned for the touchdown. And my biggest concern, with Cincinnati is their offensive line. They lasted the first, 14, 15 weeks with the same 5 starting offensive line. Since then, they've lost their left tackle, they've lost their right guard, and they've lost their right tackle. And we all remember how a bad offensive line can sink your season. Now, the Bengals somehow survived it last year, but Burrow got sacked a ton, and it finally came back to bite them in the Super Bowl. Now, the Bills losing Von Miller obviously hurts a lot, their best pass rusher, and the Bills really couldn't generate a ton of pressure against the Dolphins' offensive line last week, but the Bengals starting 3 backups along the offensive line, I think it's going to be too much to come back from. So I do really like the Bills -4.5. Pretty good value on it, as I mentioned, with every other book having them at -5. So getting them at -108 or -110 odds is pretty good value on the Bills. In terms of the total, so seemed to be a pretty good price getting it under 49.5 if you do have XBet. Bookmaker has it at 48.5, BetOnline has it at 48, and Pinnacle has it at 49. So getting it at 49.5 is beating the closing line from all three of those books. And that is the book up here is XBet. So not the most popular book in the world. If you do have access to it, that's a good play. If not, I would sit out a play on the total. But in terms of, I do like the Bills minus 4.5 a lot. And then last up, we are looking at the Cowboys versus 49ers. Incredible game, rematch from the wild card weekend last year with that Dak Prescott scramble up the middle, couldn't spike it in time. In terms of pricing, the best odds you can get looks like 49ers is at minus 183, but that would be on Pinnacle. In terms of the Cowboys, at plus 170. In terms of the spread, now this is kind of interesting. When I woke up this morning and checked the spread, it was universally 49ers minus 4 across the board, 49ers minus 4. Since then, it's been bet down and people are betting on the Cowboys, and now it's at 49ers minus 3.5. And books are still favoring the Cowboys at 3.5, right? Like Pinnacle has them at minus 110, and BetOnline has that at minus 112. They both, if you look at both sides, they're favoring the 49ers at plus 3.5. So the fact that we can get them at plus 4, you would guess that these books just haven't updated their lines quickly enough. So the value here is on the Cowboys plus 4. Now, if I hadn't looked at the value and you just told me Cowboys or 49ers minus 4, who do you like at that number? I would have actually told you the 49ers. So this is a situation where you want to trust the data, not what I personally think about a game. The data is telling you that the Cowboys plus 4 at minus 110 odds at PointsBet are the play here. Both BetOnline and Pinnacle favor the Cowboys at 3.5. So getting them at 4 is a really, really big deal and a really, really good number. And it makes sense, right? You saw how the Cowboys played on Monday night against the Bucs. If they play like that, they're going to the Super Bowl. The 49ers can't beat them and the Eagles can't beat them. Now, I'm personally skeptical that the Cowboys will be able to, A, keep that up for 2 more games, because that would be 5 straight away games for the Cowboys, which is brutal to go through. That's a huge gauntlet. And I think people are forgetting just how bad the Bucs were all year. If you look at weighted DVOA, which gives heavier weight towards the end of the year versus in less weight at the beginning of the year, the Bucs were literally 31st, the second worst team in the entire NFL. So again, I'm skeptical of it, but trust the data, trust the math, not what I think about a game. And so we're officially going to be going with Cowboys plus 4 at minus 110 odds, plus 4 at minus 110 odds. And again, it does make sense, right? The Cowboys play like that. Maybe they just had a kind of a lull at the end of the year and needed the playoffs to kind of wake themselves back up, and then just absolutely smashed Tom Brady and the Bucs, which there is something to be said for vanquishing the demons of Tom Brady and winning a playoff game. And we are getting 4 points. So the 49ers could win by a field goal, and you're still cashing this bet, Cowboys plus 4. So the math is telling us that this is the play, and that's where we're going to go with Cowboys plus 4, minus 110 odds at PointsBet. In terms of the total, it's pretty universally, not pretty, it is universally at 46, with the Pinnacle favoring the over at 46, but clearly no play here, no situation in which you're beating the no big odds, so not going to have a play on the total. But I do, again, am riding with the Cowboys plus 4. And that's going to be it for this betting preview, giving you plays for every single game. Of course, as more odds get posted, specifically player props, we will be posting more plays. So definitely make sure to subscribe to the OddsJam YouTube channel to get all that stuff moving forward. And that's going to be it. So I appreciate everybody watching, and have a good one.